2024 is such an exciting year for the resurgence of the real-time strategy genre. What is an RTS game? Well, most RTS games follow a set style. You're gathering resources on the map to build a base and an army to defeat your opponent. Micro and macro are key components to a successful RTS game. The micro and ability to move your units around the map must feel smooth, and often the higher skilled players at micro will be able to develop fast or powerful strategies around these skills. Macro is your ability to manage your resources properly by constantly spending your resources on higher tech, upgrades, or even a larger army. To be truly skilled at an RTS game, you often have to find a balance between both of these skills. I've been playing RTS games since Warcraft 2 and Age of Empires. At one point, I was doing commentary work for StarCraft 2, so I've always been a strategy nerd. There are 3 new RTS games in development right now that I've played, and I'm most excited for their release. When we think about the #1 RTS, it's without a doubt StarCraft. You could argue, well, what about Age of Empires or Command & Conquer? Yes, they're awesome, but Brood War created a whole ecosystem around the game in South Korea that is still alive and thriving to this day. StarCraft 2 launched the global esports scene as we know it today, and is also alive and well thanks to ESL. Which leads us into this resurgence or relaunch of the genre. There are 3 big players in development, and they're all trying to take the RTS genre that we know and love and make it easier for more players to get into the game. Just like in the world of anime or manga, when Dragon Ball Z came to an end, Shonen needed some new titles to invigorate readers back into that style of storytelling. Along came the big 3, One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach, which all helped bring Shonen to the top tier that it is today. In similar fashion, we have a big 3 brewing in the RTS world: Immortal, Gates of Pyre, Zerospace, and Stormgate. Time will tell if they really will meet the standards of the big 3, but from what I've played and seen, we've got a lot of good coming our way. Now let's talk about each of them real quick and why I'm so excited about these titles in particular. Now all the information that I'm sharing is public knowledge and available if you've watched or participated in the alpha stream events or show matches that the companies have released. I'll of course release specific deeper dive videos on each of these this year, so stay tuned for that. Immortal Gates of Pyre originally had a Kickstarter run back in 2021. The game is currently in alpha, and there have been some mini show matches and tournaments that you can be able to go watch on YouTube. Their focus, like all RTS, is the 1v1 experience, but they've also got 2v2 and co-op. Their goal is to have 3 different factions similar to what we see in StarCraft 2, but each faction has more than one leader associated with it to make it even more unique. They follow something that feels similar to Age of Empires 4 in my brain. That way that you know that you're going in to have similar units produced from like a barracks or an archery range, but each faction in Age of Empires has unique units, like how the Abbasid get access to camels, in addition to some of those regular pikemen and archers they get. In Immortal right now, there are 2 races that have 2 factions within them. I know they're working on a 3rd race with additional factions, but no new information has been released on that yet. The Karath, which is more angelic, futuristic style race, has the Orzum and Ajari as their 2 factions. The Aru, which are more of a nature shamanistic group, which has those factions of Mala and Zol. So if you pick Karath as your race, you will have the option to choose between Orzum and Ajari, which give you similar units with few unique ones based on which you choose. Same of course applies for the Aru. Some of the biggest differences from this RTS compared to others in development is that there are creeps on the map that give you an additional resource known as Pyre. You can use it to spend on significant spells, and some of these spells place towers in specific locations on the map, heal your units, or even cloak your units. Now, this is not a hero unit casting these spells, this is an extra tab for these powers, just like how you have a building tab where these spells are going to be located once you collect enough Pyre. Another cool thing is that you don't have to have specific workers to go build. There's a building tab that you can select the building you want and be able to place it in a specific location. The game will grab the nearest worker and have it build it. There's also an auto build mode for newer players as well, so you can be able to just kind of focus more on the micro, while your buildings will auto produce units that you have been able to select. As long as you have enough resources, then you get to pick which units you prioritize. This really helps smooth things out for newer players. Another helpful system built into the game is the way that they manage supply. Instead of building farms or supply depots, you build another barracks or production facility, and that will automatically increase your supply cap. When I tested it out, I really liked the look of the world and the units in it. The co-op survival mode was a ton of fun, as well as the 1v1 army draft, which is like a mini game that you and your opponent each draft units with a limited number of resources, then try to micro and battle each other. They're continuing to develop maps for 1v1, 2v2, and co-op. We've seen some pre-alpha tournaments, and a group of dedicated players are really getting quite skilled at the game, so I'm excited to see some more show matches and tournaments from them in the future. Next of the big three is the newest addition to the RTS hype train, Zerospace. Zerospace, like many traditional RTS, are shooting for that multi-race or faction system similar to Warcraft 3 to help balance out the game. The four factions are the Protectorate, Grell, Zol, and Legion. I'm not going to spend as much time talking about the factions in this video because Zerospace is having a special alpha launch event starting January 5th through the 22nd, with a $10,000 tournament set up at the end of the month for the top 16 ladder leaders. So we'll do a deeper dive into each faction after this month of epic games. I'll also be streaming the game during this period, so keep an eye out for that. But let's talk about the other components of the RTS that make it unique. Going into an epic sci-fi story, which sets it apart from the others, is it's the first of the big three to take the title of Cinematic RTS with an RPG-style campaign like Mass Effect. A good campaign is really important to me as an RTS player. I love going back and replaying StarCraft and Warcraft campaigns. Outside of the campaign, like any good RTS, there has to be a strong 1v1 mode, but they're also developing 3v3 modes and co-op. Having multiplayer team styles is extremely important for the next generation of RTS games, both as a co-op aspect, but also that PvP style with 3v3. Gameplays wise, it feels more like StarCraft in your army movement and positioning being key. However, hero units are a component of this game, just like Warcraft 3. There are currently 14 different heroes in the game. Similar to Immortal Gates of Pyre, there will be support spells or skills that your faction is able to utilize. You get this from gaining experience by capturing control towers, which are similar to Xel'Naga watchtowers from StarCraft 2. They also give you a little bit vision and incremental XP over time, which of course they can be recaptured and then your opponents can be able to start getting them, or you capture them back and you start getting that XP. Now, the most interesting take and twist of the existing RTS genre is that Zerospace doesn't gather minerals or gold like the other ones. Your starting town center or nexus sets up 4 auto harvesters that will gather your basic resource, so it eliminates that worker harassment mechanic that is so prevalent in the RTS games. Now, there is a harvester that does go out and gather your secondary resource that you can harass and kill, but the main resource mining cannot be interrupted by traditional means, which I think is a really cool and innovative approach. There's a lot of new ideas with Zerospace that I'm excited to explore more over the month, so keep an eye out on this channel and my Twitch stream for more hands-on learning. Finally, we move into the last of the big three, probably the most well-known since it has the most ex-StarCraft and Warcraft 3 developers, Stormgate, which recently had a major show match at DreamHack Atlanta, which was won by Team Liquid's Mana. Stormgate is also in closed beta right now, with open beta coming later this year. Stormgate is taking to the 1v1 and 3v3 ladder for competitive, but they're also setting up a co-op mode based around 3ve. So you have to have at least 3 players in order to do their co-op mode. We know there will be a campaign based on all the cinematics that Frost Giant Studios has released so far. 3ve modes will also have hero units available, but there are no current plans to have hero units in the 1v1 game modes. They currently have 2 playable races or factions in the game, known as the Vanguard, the human or Terran-like race, and the Infernal Hosts, which are more the demonic race. We know they are working on a 3rd race, and rumors that a 4th race could potentially show up in the future, but that's more of speculation based on interviews with developers. Stormgate has the closest feel to Warcraft 3 out of the big three new RTS games, especially with army movement and positioning being key to surrounding enemy units. Micro feels much more important, with units having very different speeds compared to, say, Zerospace. Not only is army movement important one, unique features that Stormgate brings that the others aren't is destructible terrain. That means that the trees that are on the map can be destroyed, opening up new pathways on the map to attack your opponents. Another aspect that is unique to Stormgate is creeps on the map. When killed, they can give you health, extra resources, vision, or even additional units that will fight for you, which goes along with that Warcraft 3 feel that I talked about with creeping around the map. Again, all of this was seen at the DreamHack Show match, and something that adds different components to map making. Now, I can't go into too many details with Stormgate until open beta hits, or we see more streamer weekends taking place. Now, I've been able to play all three of the next generation RTS games, and I'm extremely excited not only to play more of these games, but to show you all more of this RTS genre. Leave some comments down below and let me know what questions you have about each of the big three. Some questions I will be able to answer now, and some will have to wait for future videos. But thanks so much for tuning in and watching, guys, and I'll hope to see you in the next game.